Hey guys, how's it going? In today's video, I'm hoping to give you a little fall container planting inspiration. So I'm going with a green and white theme here, kind of a cooler color palette rather than the traditional fall like oranges, yellows, and reds, which I tend to do more often. But I thought it would be fun to do something with just a little bit more of a controlled color palette, and then maybe add in some white pumpkins and things like that in the end. I also want to spend a little bit more time going over each individual plant that I'm using, because I am using a mix of annuals, perennials, and shrubs in this one container. Now I brought a bunch of stuff over. I don't think I'm going to use it all, but I just want to take my time through this whole thing so that maybe you guys might find a plant that you want to incorporate out into your landscape, because they're all really neat specimens. First of all, I'm using a 20-inch Gramercy planter in the color Slate from Crescent Garden. I thought that this would be a really nice contrast to all the colors that I'm using today. So first off, I'm going to be filling it with just a regular potting mix. I don't know if I brought quite enough over, but we'll see. Yeah, I think that'll be perfect. Smooth that out. I'm not going to be adding any of the slow release fertilizer just because this is fresh soil. There are nutrients in it, and plants just aren't needing it in the fall, cooler temperatures when they're not growing as quickly. So I'm going to start with my thriller plant first, which is this Toffee Twist Carex. Now, if this doesn't scream fall, I don't know what does. I just love the structure of this grass. It's so graceful, and I think it would look even beautiful all on its own in the container somewhere with just like a single pumpkin next to it. It's just so pretty. So these are actually a zone 7 through 10. So I garden in a zone 5. They won't survive in my area, but they might in yours. And if they do, they're a cool season grass. So they grow the best in spring and fall. And then you leave them through the winter and you wait to trim them back until really early spring. But in my zone, we just treat them as an annual. And then I'm going to set it kind of toward the back of this pot, because you'll be seeing this pot mostly from like this kind of view. This will kind of be the back. It grows about 18 to 24 inches tall and wide. So in terms of height, it's just about at its maturity. If it were planted in a landscape in an area where it actually could survive and be a perennial, it would broaden out at the base and it would get a little bit bigger. But I'm not expecting really any more growth on this fall at all. So for my next step down, and honestly, I didn't think about how hard this was going to be to plant once I got this grass in here. This is going to be interesting. But for my next step down, I want to use a shrub. So this is called a Monet Weigela. Now these are an amazing little shrub. They are good for zones 4 through 6. So there's something that in my area, I can pop this out and plant it in the landscape. It's very winter hardy down to negative 30 degrees, which that's really cold. But the cool thing about this Weigela is that it's a dwarf sized shrub. So it only grows like a foot to a foot and a half tall. So it'll be a definite step down from this one. And it grows about 18 to 24 inches tall if planted in the landscape. Like I said, I don't expect much growth, if any growth, this fall. It's still a little bit warm out, so we might get a little bit, but I just don't expect much at all. So what I'm going to do is pop this out and probably remove quite a bit of the soil. We'll see what the root system looks like, but let me make a little hole here. So I'm just going to grab onto the base of the shrub, and I'm going to probably make a huge mess all around me here. Oh yeah, it's pretty soft, so I can knock some of this soil off. We don't want to do too much to the root system, but I want to be able to make it fit. Okay, let's try that out. I left the tag in there. Let me get that off. All right, so that was a lot less effort than I thought it was going to be to fit in there. So this Weigela does bloom. It blooms in the springtime, pink blooms, and they start like early spring and go through late spring. But I like it for its variegation. It likes to be in a sunny to part sunny location. If it's in really bright sun, it'll have more pink variegation to it. Less sun, it'll be more white. Either way, I think it's really, really pretty. The blooms attract hummingbirds and butterflies, and it is resistant to deer if that's something that you deal with in your area. I know that some of you guys have a real problem with that. Okay, so let's move on to the next shrub, which is this beautiful Invincible Limetta hydrangea. Isn't that a gorgeous little shrub? So this is the only one here that I'm kind of pushing it in terms of what its mature size is. And that's why it's perfect to use in a fall container, because I will be popping this out. I'm actually putting in a hedge of these this fall. So later on, I'll pop this out and put it in the landscape, because it does want to grow about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. So it clearly wouldn't be happy in this pot for an extended period of time. But when you start with one this size, you can put it in a fall container and enjoy it that way, and then enjoy it in the landscape. So this is a type of hydrangea arborescens, which is also known as kind of like an Annabelle type hydrangea. But this is kind of an improved version of an Annabelle, because its stems stay a lot stronger and they hold the blooms up. So they make a really nice specimen in the garden. It's also a zone 3 through 9. So if this is something that you put in a container where you've obviously given it more room to grow, you could keep it in there and winter it over because it's so darn hardy, which I really like about it. So I'm going to try to fit that one right in here. I think it's going to be a nice bright pop. And something that I've learned about hydrangeas in the last few years is they actually need a little bit more sun than I thought they did. Like they need a minimum of 6 hours of sunshine in order to bloom and be have stronger stems. So that's really important when you're picking out a spot in your garden. The lighting is kind of an interesting thing to figure out because like hydrangeas, like I said, they need more sunshine in order to perform and bloom and all that kind of stuff, but they don't like really harsh sunshine. So like in our area, we're high desert, it gets super hot with no humidity, no cloud cover. That's really tough on a hydrangea. So we do have to provide them some protection in the afternoon, but they like a really strong block of morning sun and maybe like early afternoon, and then they just do really well for me in that type of situation. And I know everybody's got like a different climate they're dealing with, so it's really good to like talk to other gardeners in your area or to somebody at your local garden center and kind of pick up some of those little like nuggets of information because they're so helpful and they help with the success of your own garden. All right, so the next thing I'm going to add is a little bit of a trailer. So this is called Pink Chablis Lamium. Now this one also blooms earlier on in the season with really pretty pink blooms, and again I'm using this more for foliage in this container because I don't really want any pink in this one. So this is actually a perennial down to zone 4, I believe, 4 through 8. I'll have to double check that. But it's a wonderful plant. I have it already in my garden in several locations, and it just spreads out nicely, and it's just such a beautiful thing to look at. There's lots of different varieties of these, all with different colors of irrigation, different color of flowers. But I'm going to tuck this one in right here because it will spread out and act as a little bit of a spiller, and I think that would be nice to have on this side of the container. It's also really tolerant to like heat and drought conditions once it's established. So I know a lot of you guys deal with those kind of conditions, so this is a great one to put in your garden in sun or shade. Now I'm going to add an annual cabbage or kale. I actually brought this one home initially and Aaron was like, that is not going to fit in that pot with all the rest of those things, and I think he's right. So I went and grabbed a couple of 4-inch size ones which look a little bit more appropriately sized. Thank you, Aaron. And that is going to be tucked right in here, just for a nice little boldness. But isn't it coming together pretty? I mean, there's no colorful blooms. There's just this bloom right here, and it still looks super gorgeous. So this is an ornamental cabbage. I suppose you could eat it. I don't know why you would want to because it's so pretty. I never have. If you try it, let me know. And that one, I kind of tipped the root ball just a little bit so that it sat kind of pointing outward rather than facing straight up because you want to see that bold rosette. All right, so I think I have room for one more plant in this container, and I ran and grabbed one of these Goldilocks Creeping Jenny. These are a perennial in zones 3 through 10. So a lot of you guys can utilize this in your containers and landscape if you wanted to, but I love to use them in window boxes, containers, hanging baskets. They just have such a beautiful, like, dramatic drape to them. Where like the Lamium will be a little bit more fluffy and maybe a little bit taller, this one will come out and will just like fall dramatically from the sides. So I just really like that. And not to mention the really bright pop of green is nice. So I'm reaching my hand through the back here. It's hard doing this from the back, you guys. Okay, so at this point I can either like fluff this Creeping Jenny out and have it fill in this gap a little bit more, but I have a really pretty white pumpkin that I'm just gonna set right on the edge of this container. I think that will make it look kind of extra festive. And I think I'm gonna go grab some other white pumpkins to kind of cluster around the base of the pot to kind of like tie the whole thing together and make it look like it's its own little fall display. So let me get this all cleaned up and get those pumpkins. All right, pumpkins are placed and I got it all cleaned up, and this is actually where this container is going to live for the rest of the season, which is really exciting because we walk down the sidewalk every single day, multiple times a day. So we'll get to just see this all the time, and I just think it's so pretty. I just love every once in a while doing something that's a little bit more just like, I think I used the word controlled, and that's what it is. I have to control myself in order to do this kind of color palette. I always enjoy it. I love seeing other people's creations in just kind of green and white. There's something so soothing and serene about it. And I mean, you can easily take it fall with all of these beautiful things. I mean, the white pumpkins, we've got a cream colored pumpkin here. There's a couple of squash and kind of the blue and green tones. So I think it just all goes together really, really well. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing this planter come together, and we do have a few more fall containers coming your way here pretty soon. So we will see you in the next one. Bye.